But it hasn't stopped there. Led by the likes of Alastair Campbell, he's a supposed former journalist turned Tony Blair spokesperson, New Labor spokesperson. He and others are wanting you arrested and charged for offensive commentary, also known as telling the truth. What is going on in the UK? And do you fear that police are scrutinising your tweets and interviews and things you've written?
Have these people not learned that verbally attacking Douglas Murray in the spirit of bad faith will not end well? He almost has no equal when it comes to his ability to take someone out with words. We've seen ignorant people rip into him over his books that they've never even read. People call him a fool, only to be ruthlessly torn asunder by eloquent yet scathing words from his acidic tongue. And that's towards people who've said a lot less than this person. So as you can imagine, and as you'll hear, he shows no mercy to the former British politician, Alastair Campbell, who publicly called for him to be arrested for inciting violence under terrorism laws. This was him inviting the police to take a look at some of Douglas Murray's work. How low can you get? As low as a snake's belly, that's how. But nothing more than you'd expect from the intolerant left. And all because Murray talks about how mass immigration and multiculturalism is failing. Mass immigration, Campbell's Labour government nefariously started. Murray doesn't hold back in his response to Campbell, pointing out it is he who should be on trial over the war in Iraq. Campbell is a guy who was pivotal in the Iraq war and once said, and I quote, "Come on, you seriously don't think we won't find anything?" That was regarding Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction. And that's just the beginning. Murray gets a lot more scathing and personal than that. I bet this guy now regrets trying to get him arrested. Take a listen.
The left in the UK are trying to cancel you. They want you banned from TV appearances. They want you to stop writing for publications like The Spectator. But it hasn't stopped there. Led by the likes of Alastair Campbell, he's a supposed former journalist turned Tony Blair spokesperson, New Labor spokesperson. He and others are wanting you arrested and charged for offensive commentary, also known as telling the truth. What is going on in the UK? And do you fear that police are scrutinising your tweets and interviews and things you've written?
Well, all that caused this was the fact that I've used my eyes in recent decades, and I've also used my pen. And I have described what has happened to my country of birth, Great Britain, and the continent of Europe, and indeed the wider developed world, and the challenges that come through illegal and legal mass migration. That's not all migration, but illegal and legal mass migration. Interestingly enough, this interview that seems to have caused this breakdown from Alastair Campbell was one in which I simply said, what I describe in The Strange Death of Europe as happening is indeed what is now happening. And I said this, as many people have noted, not in a spirit of glee, but in one of deep lamentation. I never wanted to be proved right on this, and it gives me absolutely no joy to have been proven right, that the importing of very large numbers of people illegally and legally from very different cultures into a society which totally fails to integrate them will lead to massive problems, including at some point a massive backlash. Now, it's interesting that Alastair Campbell should have been one of the ones to try to start this pile on. Of course, Alastair Campbell was part of the Labour government that in the late 90s and early 2000s massively ramped up illegal and legal migration into the UK. He's actually one of the architects of this problem, a problem which one of his colleagues at the time described as being deliberate. See, one of his colleagues said he came out of meetings about this issue with a very clear feeling that the Labour government of Tony Blair wanted this mass movement of people into the UK to, quote, rub the right's nose in diversity. Well, of course, all these things had unexpected consequences. consequences. But Alistair Campbell is one of the people responsible for them. I'm only responsible for pointing out the facts and the lamentable situation that he got our country into. There's a couple of other things very quickly, Rita. Of course, this man, Campbell, is best known for his lying dossier about WMD in Iraq, which helped bounce Britain and other countries into the Iraq war. So if he had any kind of sense of decency, he would have disappeared from public life a long time ago. He was also, of course, the person who hounded Dr. David Kelly to suicide. And that's one of the really interesting things about Alistair Campbell. He's an unbelievable bully and a hack. And one of the things about him, like most hacks and bullies of his kind, he thinks that he can hide behind, as he always does, the claim that he himself is very mentally fragile. One of the interesting things about that is he can chase people like David Kelly to suicide. But if you criticize Alistair Campbell for his frequent bursts of utter insanity, he says that you are using his mental health against him. He's a totally sick individual on every possible level. I make no apology for pointing out the terrible things that he and his friends did to my country.
Well, your greatest crime appears to be that you were right. You wrote about this years ago. You warned about what was going to happen in The Strange Death of Europe. You were right when you warned of the unrest that would come in books like The Madness of Crowds and The War Against the West. And as the great Thomas Sowell wrote, people will forgive you for being wrong, but they will never forgive you for being right. And what you talked about, that mass migration, we've got that discussion happening right here in Australia. We've had record numbers coming in legally. But if they're not assimilating, if they don't share your values, as we've seen in the UK, you're going to have these problems. And just trying to stomp it out with two-tier policing and a justice system, Douglas, isn't going to solve the underlying issue.
No, absolutely not. I mean, as I've said for many years, the mass movement of people often who dislike the culture they're moving into intensely, and that always amazes me. I don't understand why people would move to societies that they dislike very much, but large numbers of people do, mainly just because they want to be in a system which can reward them, at least to some extent financially, either through welfare or through the economy that works far better than the countries that they fled from. But if you bring people from very strong cultures with very strong ethnic identities and religious identities into countries that are completely apologetic, kowtowed, self-shamed, and embarrassed about their past, as is the story that has been pushed on the people of Australia in recent years, as has been the story pushed on the people of Britain, Europe, and America in recent years, you don't have a hope of integrating people. So yes, all of this stuff is absolutely predictable. It doesn't require a prophet. It just requires people with their eyes open and a willingness to tell the truth. And I hope that people do have their eyes open and continue to tell the truth, as I will. And I'm not going to be intimidated by any of these people who should have so much guilt on their consciences. I would be surprised that they dare to show their faces in public again.